Sometimes we get faced with massive decisions as neurodivergent mums where the stakes are really high. And in those moments, it can just feel soul-crushing, paralysing. We all hear the idea of analysis paralysis and how much we spin in our heads and spin our wheels. And the harder we try and find a solution, the more difficult it seems to be to get there. Decision-making for neurodivergent mums is hard. We spoke a bit about this last week and how to make some of the simpler decisions easy. But what do we do when it's a big decision, when there's lots at stake? Today, we're going to unpack that on Mumshine Moments. If you haven't met me before, I'm Freya. I'm the neurodivergent brain behind Mumshine, which is a counselling, coaching and support practice for neurodivergent mums. I'm really passionate about lightening the load for neurodivergent mums. So I wanted to create these Mumshine Moments channel where we can unpack in 10 minutes or less, because I know you're busy, some of the things that make neurodivergent motherhood hard and some simple strategies to try to lighten the load, make things a bit easier. So decision making. Last week, you probably remember we discussed the rule of fives. So how long will I remember this for? 5 seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades. We discussed the strategies that we can try for the smaller decisions. But what if this is a big one? What if this is one of the ones that's going to hit you for years or decades, where the stakes are really high? How do we navigate those? Even for some people, that might be the 5-month side of things. And let's face it, raising neurodivergent kids, these high stakes decisions come up more because we're raising kids in a world that wasn't necessarily designed for how their brains work. So a lot of the simple things, or the things that should be simple, such as schooling choices or working hours, after school and holiday supports, which often feel really easy for other parents, or something that is just a, toss a coin decision, can be really hard for us. They can be really heavy with big potential ongoing consequences. We also need to make a lot of more medical decisions, a lot more decisions about supports and strategies, and even how to talk to our kids about how their brain works, what to tell them and when. All of these things can feel really crippling, really heavy, really hard, and they add enormously to our mental load. So when you're faced with one of these paralysing decisions, what's going on? Well, there's a few things to note, I guess, about neurodivergent brains and some of the traps that we can fall into. Often, when we're stuck with a big decision, our brain is frantically problem solving, which is a real strength that we have, but it's problem solving trying to find the perfect solution. And we get stuck in analysis paralysis of what if and moving things around, almost like shuffling blocks in our brain. And if we tried this, and what if we tried this, and what if we tried this, and maybe there's a third option, we can get stuck in that, hunting for a perfect option, when in fact often there isn't one. The other thing that can often happen too is we're so worried about the consequences that it can feel really heavy. What if I get this decision wrong? And the safest thing to do is just not to make a decision at all. It's just not to start. So how do we cut through? How do we change this dialogue with really big decisions? Well, 3 things we can try. 1, first and foremost, you should not be making these decisions on your own. Whether that's getting support from a partner, a friend, or even a mental health professional, or some other support professional, might be someone that's involved in your child's care, but to help lighten the load in making that decision. Getting expert advice and opinions, but most importantly, that opportunity to externalise your thoughts. The reason I say this is an overwhelming number of neurodivergent folk are external processes. And by that, it means we need to put information out there to make sense of it. So something can feel often really big and really chaotic and really messy in our brains and really hard to grapple with. But the minute we say it out loud, or maybe we draw it out, maybe we brainstorm, maybe we write it out, maybe we actually practically give it a go. When we put our thoughts out there, often it can become clearer. And it makes sense, given our lower levels of executive functioning, which helps in relation to prioritisation and organisation of thoughts and memories. Makes perfect sense. So that ability to put it out there, to kind of see it in a different light, in a different way, can really help. So 1, if you're faced with a big decision, externalise it. It's not about shifting blame. It's not about having someone to later go, but you said this. It's about having a mechanism which helps our brains to sort thoughts. Second, this is a big one, is the idea of pre-acceptance. And what I mean by that is the idea that the decision you make may not be the right one. But the crazy bit is we're never going to know. We're never going to know what if. We're never going to know the other way. Often our brain in hindsight will come back and go, if you'd made the other decision, it would have been better. But who knows, it might have been worse. But accepting that your brain's going to try and trip you up. It's going to try and learn from the past. It's going to try and reinvent things if things don't go well. That's going to happen no matter what you choose. So that idea of accepting that right now you're making the best decision you have with the skills, tools, resources and information that you have available to you. You're doing it with good intent. You're doing it with the right outcome in mind. You're doing it with hope. And the third thing that can sometimes be really helpful when we're going through this process, and I kind of gave you a clue in the last one, is the idea of an outcome. Often when it comes to big decisions, we're taught to make pro-con lists. Well, that's great. You know, if you've got a brain that can sort and organise those things into important and not important. Otherwise, you just end up with 2 lists with 20 things on them. Not helpful. It just clouds things. So often when I'm working with people in relation to making big decisions, it's working out what's the outcome here you're trying to achieve. What is the hope that you have? What is the goal that you're working towards? And then asking yourself if choice A or choice B, or even choice C, which one will take you closer towards that? Which one will better reach the outcome? Because that gives then an ability to focus our thoughts and our brains in, to kind of hierarchically organise those thoughts. Because if we're trying to get to the outcome, so for example, it might be, I'm just going to pick a really basic one, but what is the way that I can get to the shops with the least amount of petrol? You might go, well, I can drive this way, and you might be stuck on analysing using the car. But actually, if you take a step back, you go, probably walking. Walking would get me to the shops with the least amount of petrol. So you see how that works in there. It opens up a different perspective in our brains. It opens up a different way of thinking, but it also works more effectively than a pro-con list that we can just get lost in. So those are the 3 things that I would suggest. 1, externalising your thoughts, getting help and getting support in making the decision and sorting your thoughts and what's going on. 2, the pre-acceptance, that you're doing the best you can with the information, skills, tools and resources you have available, and you'll never know the outcome of what your other choice would be. It's just not possible until they invent time travel. And then the 3rd one is really thinking in relation to that decision, what's the outcome here? And what will get me closer to the outcome? And again, there's no perfect outcome, but there's no perfect choice. Which one will get us closer? Because that opens up a little space for grey. And finally, the super uncomfortable thing with making a decision is actually putting it into action. And that often in itself can feel overwhelming. And so introducing the idea of an experiment. I'm going to give it a go, I'm going to see. Because in reality, we're never going to know whether or not it's the right decision, the right choice, or a good decision, or a good choice, however you want to look at it. If it's the right next step, we're not going to know until we actually put in action. So the idea of experimenting can really help. This isn't a change forever. We're going to try it for the next 2 weeks, month, 2 months, whatever that might be, and we're going to observe. So, for example, it might be in relation to school holidays and strategies for that. We're going to do this for the next school holidays. We're going to note, we're going to see. Because the intent is for my child to feel happy and safe, and for me also to be able to have a break. Right? That might be the goal. So you might experiment with different things and see for next school holidays, because then you're not locking into it forever. It can make the decision feel less final and less big, and give you a chance also to observe in reality the impact of that choice. So that's it really for today for decision making. Hopefully there was something in there that might help you with some of the bigger decisions you need to make in your life, and lighten the load so that those decisions feel less paralysing, less scary, and you can free up some brain space to focus on some of the other things that are going on in your life. I'm Freya. It's been lovely chatting, and I look forward to catching up with you next time on Mumshine Moments.